You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 10th of December 2025 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting to you live from Studio 1 here at Midori House in London. I'm Tom Edwards. Coming up on today's programme...
I think they're weak, but I also think that they want to be so politically correct. Europe doesn't know what to do.
As Trump labels European Leaders Week, we'll discuss the increasingly strained transatlantic relationship with our European editor-at-large, Ed Stocker. We'll also discuss this year's Turner Prize-winning artist and all the latest from the international art world with Monocle's culture editor, Sophie Monaghan-Coombs. Then...
Hi, I'm Virginia McLeod. I'm the head of book publishing at Monocle. I'm excited to tell you about 4 books I love for gifting this season.
Thanks, Virginia. Can't wait for that. I like books. All that and more ahead here on The Briefing with me, Tom Edwards. A very warm welcome to this Wednesday edition of The Briefing here on Monocle Radio. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are. Now, wherever you are, you have probably heard US President Donald Trump labelling European leaders weak, accusing them of not knowing what to do about everything from trade to migration. This all comes, of course, as the US administration publishes its new national security strategy, in which it claims Europe's facing civilizational erasure and that the US must cultivate resistance within the continent to Europe's current trajectory. What is the state of the transatlantic relationships? Well, here to give us his perspective is Ed Stocker, Monocle's Europe editor-at-large, based in Milan, but here today in London, but one of his former stamping grounds. Ed, welcome.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Nice to be in London?
Very nice indeed.
It's nice
and mild.
It's too mild.
I'm enjoying it.
Are you feeling festive? What's the vibe?
Yeah, I am feeling quite festive, yeah. And also, at Midori House, a load of Christmas trees were delivered this morning. So that helped with the festive vibe.
Absolutely. Well, no, good point. And that is in readiness, of course, for the London Christmas market. It's Christmas market season at Monocle. Find out the details on our website. If you're anywhere near London town, come and join us this weekend. Ed will probably be there with some chestnuts roasting on an open fire or something.
Exactly.
There's a playful look on in his eyes, listeners. Ed, listen, serious business. We heard that one of the mad recent quotes from Trump at the top of the programme, swinging at Europe. It's extraordinary. Civilizational erasure. Even by...
Sounds like a group name, doesn't it?
Trump standards, super antagonistic rhetoric. Just tell me, from your Milanese station... what is the prevailing mood? How do the papers cover this? Very different administration, of course, in Italy than here in the UK. What's the kind of mood? What's the vibe check of what the status is of the current European-US alliance?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's a lot to unpick there. I think, it gets covered a lot in the UK. Trump commands headlines wherever you go around the world. One aspect is that Giorgia Meloni, you could argue, is ideologically aligned with Donald Trump in some things, perhaps when it comes to migration policy, some social issues, and also, Meloni, who is, of course, the Fratelli d'Italia, the far-right prime minister of Italy in a right-wing coalition. She has looked to sort of try and be a bridge anyway between Europe and the US. Donald Trump has said nice things about her in the past. He likes winners. He likes the fact that she's sort of held Italy together in this coalition. And frankly, that is an achievement, given how many governments there have been in Italy, even if you disagree, as I do personally, with a lot of her politics. So there is that. But obviously, at the same time, Meloni has, we thought she was going to be much more sceptical about the European Union than she's proved to be. She is astute in that way. She knows how to play the game. And she, one of the first things she did, when she became Prime Minister was travel to Brussels and kind of shore up the European relationship. So she does believe in the European Union. There are lots of things that you could argue she is cynical about within it. And so, it won't have gone down well, the fact that, Donald Trump is attacking Europe. It's, this sort of double-headed attack, isn't it? The policy paper you mentioned and this very candid, bizarre interview he gave Politico.
Well, I was going to ask you about that because it's some of the things he talked about. The language that I just mentioned, this erasure of civilization and the need for resistance, which is pretty worrying. But he also talked about decay within European economies and countries, primarily driven by migration. To what extent is there a balancing act for Maloney then to strike between, as you said, it's a kind of expedient cozying up, and there are some areas of ideological overlay. But, like most nationalists, she is governed first and foremost by self-interest. Is that a balancing act that you think she is equipped to strike? And is the public within Italy open-minded about her having to strike that balance?
I mean, yeah, you do. I mean, I think everyone realises, the Italian public and the Italian Prime Minister realise that there are lots of different Donald Trumps, aren't there? Donald Trump is wildly unpredictable. Look at the peace plan for Russia-Ukraine, originally basically almost like a carbon copy of what Russia wanted, walked back slightly, but he's always, unpredictable. The fact that, he disparaged essentially the New York mayor-elect, and then they had a meeting at the White House, Mamdani, in which he said very nice things about him. So Donald Trump is just so hard to predict, and he changes all the time. So look, I don't know, he gave a very outspoken interview to Politico. How much of he means remains to be seen. Having said that, the fact that this security policy paper is in writing, is clearly something that they feel strongly about. And I guess the big shift here is that in the past, it was always America first, and still is, but it was kind of contained within the borders of the US in a way. It was about doing this for the US. Now it looks like, and it remains to be seen how much they can actually do about this. Obviously, the European Union and European nations are still independent, from the US. But it seems like he wants to sort of export his view of the world to other parts of the world, and his sights are focused on Europe. But it's a very strange thing, basically saying that Europe is set to become less European. He's talking about, things like ethnicity and immigration, the fact that, Europe will be unrecognizable, and somehow that presents this challenge, not just culturally, but also economically. So odd nativist.
Well, absolutely, but it fits with his existing rhetoric, and maybe there's an opportunity for the bloc more broadly, precisely to exploit the very things that he's painting as pejorative, as negative, as an opportunity. We'll maybe return to that. Just on Ukraine, and you alluded to this sort of shifts in language and shifts in priority around what a potential peace could look like. European leaders met in London. We've seen a sort of broad reaffirmation of their collective support for Ukraine. But through this sort of European editor lens, lots of conflicts, in terms of priorities, nation by nation, questions about how coherent that collective support is. On that specifically, Ed, what is your take? I don't know if we can look at the Italian position specifically when you speak to colleagues or other journalists, politicians, whether that is in France, in Germany, wherever they are in the bloc. I don't know. What's your take on the status of that collective position as regards Ukraine?
It's so hard, isn't it? I mean, I think broadly speaking, given all the support they have, given the location, the fact that, Ukraine is a European nation, it has borders with, European heavyweights, it has a border with Poland that has, spent a lot of money on defense recently. So, Europe, broadly speaking, sees itself as committed to supporting Ukraine because, frankly speaking, it's in their own self-interest. It's a very different situation for the US, which is a long way away from the theatre of conflict, unlike the European Union and, continental Europe and even the UK. So I think for that reason, it's very hard for Europe to radically change its stance. at the same time, there are divergences within Europe. Meloni has been much more cynical about any sort of ground support within Ukraine, which other nations in Europe have been keener to do. But broadly speaking, Italy has been supportive of Ukraine since the beginning. I mean, it's really difficult. You alluded to, obviously, the meeting in the UK recently between, Europe's heavyweights, and it would be very difficult to see a huge shift in their stance. So at the moment, it seems to be an impasse, really. It's hard to know what will happen because Ukraine has made it very clear, and Europe has been pretty supportive of this, that it doesn't want to give up the east. It doesn't want to withdraw and allow Russia to have that area for itself because they just see it as a threat to their security, a position from which they could launch further attacks.
And based on what happened in 2014.
There is historical precedent.
Yeah. Ed, listen, absolutely fascinating. Thanks for making sense of some of that for us. Always great to have you here alongside me in the studio.
Great to be
It's
here.
a treat for the London staffers to have our friends from all around the world here in the office with us. That's Monocle's Europe Editor-at-Large, Ed Stocker, joining us on the briefing. 11 minutes past midday in London. Let's cross over to the other studio. Hassan Anderson is standing by with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Tom. Clashes along the Thailand-Cambodia border have entered a third day, forcing more than 500,000 people to flee due to shelling and airstrikes. Both governments accuse each other of reigniting the violence as hospitals and border communities rush civilians into shelters. Amazon and Microsoft have unveiled a combined $52.5 billion investment plan to expand India's AI and cloud infrastructure as the global tech giants further their ties to the country. The move follows a surge of major international investment and includes new data center projects and government-facing AI platforms. And Italy has succeeded in its bid to have Italian cuisine recognised by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Rome says the listing celebrates food as a cornerstone of Italian identity and expects a boost in tourism as a result. Those are the day's headlines. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Hass. More news headlines coming away at the top of the next hour when the clock ticks through to 1300 here in London. Here in the UK, the annual Turner Prize for British Visual Art was awarded yesterday to Naina Kalu. Here with more about that and some other stories from the world of art and culture that have caught her eye. It's a delight to welcome back to the studio Monocle's own Sophie Monaghan-Coombs. Good afternoon, Sophie.
Good afternoon, Tom. Thanks for having me.
No, an absolute pleasure. Talk to me about the Turner Prize. It's a funny one. I don't know. Is this maybe less globally relevant than perhaps it was at the sort of peak of the kind of YBAs and all the rest of it? Still makes headlines here in the UK. Give us your take on what it means and tell us more about this year's recipient.
Yes, I think, as you say, there's a little bit of a question over the sort of status and the importance of the Turner Prize now. When you look back at some of the people that have won it in the past, people like Tracy Emin and Damien Hirst, they're really the kind of greats of British contemporary art. And I think, now it does feel maybe slightly less relevant. One thing I think that is kind of important to say is that this year's shortlist had painters on and, things like that, which aren't necessarily associated with those kind of boundary breaking contemporary art, of people like Hirst and Emin that we saw in the past. But this year's, as you said, was awarded last night in Bradford. It is the UK's City of Culture, so that's why it was there. And the artist who was chosen has a really interesting story. Naina Kalu is a Glaswegian artist in her 50s, and her work she makes these kind of big hanging sculptures that are very sort of repetitive and rhythmic. She's very obsessed with kind of using one line. So that might be of tape or wrapping kind of different things like the tape from VHS discs, so things like that. But then she also does drawings which kind of swirl and spiral in big sort of circular vortexes. And one of the things that makes her interesting as an artist is because this marks the first time the Turner Prize has been won by an artist with a learning disability. And because she's non-verbal, so, being a kind of advocate for her own art and her own practice is obviously comes with lots of challenges. And so I think it's, it's made history for that reason. But at the same time, there's lots of commentators, and also the Turner Prize in itself are trying to say very strongly this isn't why she's won. That's just, part of her story, but it's not, a kind of, it doesn't take anything away from the art that she produces.
No, it's a great story. And as you said, it's great to recognise great artistic expression, particularly from those who maybe have struggled traditionally to find their voice. And that's really arresting. Just on the sort of awards flim flam up in Bradford, as you said, is it our European capital of culture for the year? I think you mentioned.
It is the UK's
capital of culture. And an amazing heritage in visual arts. There's some great British artists, of course, who are from Bradford. But tell me a bit more about, was it a jolly old knees up?
Yes,
I know you weren't there. But...
I think it was a very joyful celebration. And one thing that I kind of teased you with before the programme was trying to make you guess which Bradford legend presented the prize. And it wasn't Hockney, as we've discussed, but it was Dynamo.
Now, that is not...
the magician. Did you know he was from Bradford?
Maybe in some distant, far-flung corner of the past, I would have got that. But
well, I didn't.
Was there a hilarious disappearing, reappearing prize? Or
no, I
like
don't
that?
actually think he really kind of ramped that up, which was a bit of a disappointment. But otherwise, I think it was a very joyful event. One thing that I think is which I'll mention quickly, which I thought was interesting. The prize for this is £25,000, and then there are also smaller prizes for the rest of the shortlist, which is of 4 artists. But just very recently, the Serpentine Gallery has launched a new art award with in partnership with a foundation in the US. And this will award £200,000 to 5 artists over 10 years. So that is the largest contemporary art prize. And it was announced just before the Turner, and I just think it is, and it's starting from next year, and I just think it's quite interesting, as we talked about, maybe the Turner's losing a little bit of its shine. There are other prizes and other organisations that are stepping in at this moment.
And it's interesting when you get these sort of arms races in, prizes and all the rest of it, and particularly if there's something that's more about supporting an artist over an ongoing time so they can actually explore new areas of practice, that's maybe more compelling. A topic we'll come back to. So if you've spotted a few other things, which we'll just quickly rattle through. We're talking to Ed a moment or two ago in the programme about the Ukraine conflict. There's some interesting sort of cultural... Well, it's not really soft power, it's pretty hard power. It's hot conflict expressions of cultural capital as war messaging. This is super interesting. Tell us about this.
Yes, so on the 29th of November, there was a ribbon-cutting ceremony for a new art institution in Mariupol. This is obviously super contentious and really audacious, to be honest. And it has been, sanctioned and put forward by the Russian authorities. And they've taken over what was kind of art facility, building before in Mariupol and turned it into an interactive art facility. And it's kind of showing the Nazism inherent in Ukraine, things that, Russia has used to kind of excuse their invasion. And I just think it's really interesting. As you say, there's a lot of this kind of the cultural narrative of the war is really important. Russian forces have seized thousands of artworks, particularly from Mariupol, but from across Ukraine. There's been a lot of looting, but also destroying museums. And so to kind of start this new museum and have photo galleries dedicated to the full-scale invasion, things like that, I think it's pretty extraordinary.
It is absolutely. It's kind of bizarre, and yet, as you said, it's coherent if you look at the way that Russia attempts to communicate some of these cultural values. I think, again, one we'll come back to. Just quickly, stellar name in the European sort of exhibition gallery space, Hauser and Wirth. I'm sure lots of our domestic listeners here in the UK will have visited their various sites here. Amazing. And it's funny because if we looked at sort of publicly revealed results for the last 12 months, sometimes it's slightly contradictory in terms of where the direction of travel is. But the Hauser and Wirth expansion appears to continue apace. Just tell us about this one.
Yes, so this has been in the works for a couple of years, but it's just been confirmed that Hauser & Wirth will open their 18th outpost and their first in Italy, in Palermo. And I think that is, maybe it's a slightly surprising choice, Sicily, but it looks like a really beautiful building. It's this wonderful 19th century palazzo, and it's had various past lives as a private art gallery, a gambling den, and also a sort of administrative civic building. And I think this is really interesting, particularly for Hauser & Wirth. They're opening another outpost this year, which is the third that they will now have in California, but this one's in Palo Alto. And I think it's interesting that they are moving into Italy. I reported last year on a story about Tadeusz Ropak opening in Milan this year in autumn. And also the London Gallery Herald Street will be heading to Bologna early next year. So it feels like there's this little bit of a pull towards Italy. And I think partly that is because in the summer, the country significantly reduced the VAT on art sales, art, antiques and collectibles. So they had the highest rate in Europe, 22%, and they've cut it all the way down to 5%. So I think this is, it's
You're so cynical, Sophie. Surely it's just because it's such a beautiful part of the
world.
world.
Of course, yes. Palermo's lovely and everyone wants to go there. But I do think it is interesting. It feels like Italy is, really pulling people towards it. And Hauser & Wirth, obviously, they are known for their sales and being a blue chip gallery, but their outposts in Monocle and Somerset also have, cafe spaces, and they're a bit more community focused. They bring in schools and things like that. So it's also, got a slight kind of public museum edge to it, even if at its heart it is a commercial gallery.
They're very good at hospitality, and I've heard not bad eating in Sicily.
Yes,
excellent stuff. Sophie, brilliant wrap. Thanks very much for guiding us through those. Lots of interesting stories to follow. That's our Sophie Monaghan-Coombs joining us here on The Briefing. You're back with The Briefing on Monocle Radio, and we've got a little Christmas gifty for you to wrap up today's programme. I'm here now with Monocle's head of book publishing, Virginia McLeod. Good afternoon, Virginia.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm not too bad. Are you feeling Christmassy, can I ask? You're wearing that Santa hat, so I'm assuming that's indicative of a broad enthusiasm for the season.
Luckily, this is not a visual medium, Tom. That way we can see that I'm not wearing a Christmas hat.
But are you looking forward to the festive season? Are you
Of course.
You're a Christmas enthusiast?
Yeah, an enthusiast-ish. I've done the tree and a little bit of gifting, and I'm here to talk about that today. And of course, because it's me, we're going to talk about book gifts.
Well, exactly. Now, can I say, it's funny, there's a sort of, I find, frankly, offensive cliche. Oh, what is it? Socks and books. Boo. If I just got socks and books, I would be beyond happy.
Ditto.
Why is a good book, I guess the emphasis being on the good, why is a book always a great gift, Virginia?
I think if you know your recipient, you can target your gift of a book to them. So it might be an illustrated book. Maybe they're not a great reader, but they're a visual person. They love to look at beautiful things. Also, books can be beautiful objects in their own right. So it might be a pleasure to have around something you just sort of like have a flick through, but you don't sort of immerse yourself in for days, weeks, months at a time. Then you might have a reader on your list who loves to immerse themselves in, contemporary literature. And I've got examples of all of those things on my gifting list today.
Well, yeah, exactly. Let's pile in. And, listeners, humbly allow us to present one or two Monocle products amongst the offer. But where do you want to start, Virginia? That is one of the fattest books. It's like, that's house brick sized, breeze block sized. Tell me what you've got.
Exactly. It's a lovely little brick of a book. It's called Patented, 1,000 Design Patents. And it's just the most charming book. It's really kind of like easy to pick up. It's surprisingly light. So when you pick it up...
you say easy? It's like a breeze block.
Have a go.
Oh, it's lighter than I was expecting. It's not hollow. Is it one of those ones that's got a bottle of scotch hidden in the middle of it?
It's got very sort of light, airy paper, so that you almost sort of throw it onto the ceiling as you pick it up because you're anticipating something like a brick.
I was surprised by its lightness.
Yeah. But
this is beautiful.
Its charm is in... It's for design buffs, sure, and it's 1,000 pages of design patent drawings.
Yeah, it's literally...
And they're all
patents.
taken...
Where do you stand on this?
Oh, I've had this conversation before.
Because I was told a patent is a patent, and you only say patent if you're talking about shiny shoes.
I thought that this
Discuss.
was a US-UK phenomenon.
Maybe it is.
And an American has picked me up for saying patent, and he said patent. So, frankly, I don't know. But let's
Okay.
tomato, I guess, through this.
Potato. Sorry, I interrupted your flow.
That's okay. Yes, I love this book. It is for design buffs, but it's also for like even illustration buffs, if you like, because it's full of the actual patent drawings from the US Patent Office, and it goes all the way back to 1900. So every single page has got these beautiful hand-drawn drawings on it with all the little information that goes with the
It's incredible.
patent.
Look at this Ferry Porsche's automobile from the September the 5th, 1963.
Exactly.
Automotive buff.
Exactly.
Straight in on that one.
Automotive. It's any kind of buff, you'll find something in there. What I personally found so charming about it is the nostalgia aspect. So when I was flicking through it, it's like, oh, that's a mixing bowl or a spatula or something that my grandmother used. And then these sort of anonymous objects like, oh, that's the stapler I use at the office. So things that you wouldn't think a patent would need to be involved are in there.
This is sorry, I'm just completely. This is absolutely an afternoon minimum.
I think
lost in.
I think the
Brilliant.
producer on this show, when I showed him the book, he said he almost cried with love for it.
Wept. Look at that emotional impact. Oh, he might have just dropped it on his foot. As we said, it's quite the tome. Absolutely love that one, Virginia. How are you going to maintain this standard? What have you got next for me?
Well, the next one is a personal favourite that I read this year. So it's narrative fiction, and I'm doing some research on Turkey because I'm going to travel there in the new year. So I've been sort of reading Turkish literature. So the book I'm going to talk about is called There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak, a British-Turkish author. And this book just had me going down rabbit holes of my own ignorance. So off I was in Mesopotamia and Nineveh and booking trips to the British Museum to see their Nineveh collection, but also understanding more about that historical connection, taking us to Iraq in the present day and what that means for me, us, the world. But also connecting those two rivers, the Euphrates, the Tigris and the Thames, and the whole idea of water and what it means to everybody. So I thought it was a fascinating book and an absolute joy to read, very immersive, and her technique for interweaving all of these people and places and histories, it was impressively unobservable. So you were just taken away by all these different stories and people, and I just found it a wonderful read. So anyone on your list who likes a good read and amazing quality fiction, I'd recommend There Are Rivers in the Sky.
She's incredible, and it's interesting what you said. That's what always strikes me about her work, is that she picks out the sort of textural qualities of places and weaves it into the similar human fabric in a really... I mean, some of her books are pretty tough to read, but they're incredibly arresting. Seconded, Virginia. Now, we said we're going to indulge the sort of monocle part of your book enthusiasm. We've got some cracking stuff pending, out now. I can see you have the telltale orange cover of the Monocle Book of Designers on Sofas. Remind us why this should be top of the Christmas list for anybody.
Well, it looks very Christmassy on the outside because it's got lovely gold type and it's in bright orange, so it feels very festive right off the shelf. I feel like Christmas is a time, no matter whether you're in cold weather or hot weather, that sofas are big in our lives. This particular period in the lead up, I think a lot of people are thinking about, is my sofa good enough, big enough? Do I need a sofa bed? What's my sofa situation? So people might be shopping for sofas and looking to accommodate friends and family who are travelling in to see them. And then even if they're quite happy with their own sofa, they're probably going to be spending a fair bit of time on their sofa in the next few weeks. So I feel like this book is just a good little time to remind ourselves how important sofas are in all our lives. So it's a design book, product design, and we meet 50 designers from around the world, and they tell us about their sofa, what it means to them, what design of furniture means to them, and we capture them with special portraits on their sofas.
And listen, we should say lots of these folks, and there's some amazing names from, sublimely talented designers. Many of them I think may not always have been so ready to do a candid portrait, but there's something about getting passionate designers on design that's obviously sort of unlocked their openness both to the idea and then to the discussion. And you've obviously got the focal point of the design object, the sofa, which necessarily is a melding of form and function. Were you surprised by the alacrity with which these, some incredible names in the book, were happy to talk? Because is it because we were untapping their passion for their own design objects, maybe?
Sometimes, yes, but even the people who were sitting on the sofa that they designed, they weren't selling or promoting. They were really genuinely sort of saying, I designed this sofa because I thought something was missing or that it would be perfect for me, but I love it because my family love it and I spend time with my son on it or I read on it. And then the people who weren't sitting on their own designed sofas, it meant so much to them. Like they had really thought about how the sofa fitted into their life and their family lives, and their friends, their pets, their kids all came into play. So it's like lots of charming stories.
And it's amazing. Okay, there's some super premium, exclusive, very expensive design objects. Some very humble pieces that have the same impact. The clock is against us, Virginia. Just quickly, the final hurrah today. This is a newbie. What have you got? It's one of our handbooks that you and the team create here at Monocle. A quick sell for the Switzerland, the Monocle Handbook.
Yes, it's just out this month, so we're very excited about that. So what better time than to be planning a last-minute winter holiday, and Switzerland could be a perfect destination. But you have maybe a little bit of time on your hands over the break to start planning a spring or a summer break, and this book's got all kinds of top tips and recommendations for places you might never have thought about to visit in Switzerland.
Get your copy now, available, Virginia. It's the usual thing. All good bookshops, shops, online.
Online, monocle.com, all good bookshops around the world, globally available.
There's the CTA from the top of the Monocle publishing tree. Brilliant to have you with us. So good to chat. Virginia McLeod, thanks for chatting to us here on The Briefing. And that is all for this Wednesday edition of the programme. My thanks to the producer, Hassan Anderson, our researcher, Joanna Moser, and our studio manager, Elliot Greenfield. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow noon in London, 1300 if you happen to be in Switzerland and tuning in. But from me, Tom Edwards, and the Wednesday team, goodbye and thanks for listening.